I don't know how many times I don't know how many times I've attempted to make this video. I really don't. In fact, it's gotten to the point where I've even given up at some point. And every time I give up, something always tells me to cut the camera on and just talk. Say what you want to say. Say everything you have to say and get it off your chest. No matter what it is. Just cut the camera on and just talk. So yeah, first off, I want to say right now that I really hope everybody is having a good start of the year so far because trust and believe me, I am not. And for the people who has been following me on my social media, my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook, everything, you guys know what's going on. And for the people who don't, I recently lost my dad last month on the very last day of January. I'm sitting here still trying to process everything that happened because I still can't believe everything that happened. Hell, I still trying to accept the fact that he's gone because trust me, it's hard. It's hard to accept the fact that he is gone. And now that I think about it, I still don't know why. I still don't know what happened that led to him passing away because it started off with them having a stroke and then it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating. Everything just kept getting worse and nobody could figure out why. Like it started off with them having a stroke. Hell, I was the one who called the ambulance on him when I walked into the house and found him sitting in the middle of the floor in the living room. The ambulance came and got him, and he stayed in the hospital for like a week. That's where he found out that he had a stroke. In fact, the stroke resulted to him being weak on his left arm and his left leg. It wasn't immobilized because he could still use his left arm. He could still grab stuff with it, but he could barely lift his arm up at all. And his left leg, he could still move it, but he cannot stand on it at all. So yeah, it started off with him having a stroke, and I try my best to see him every day. And then he got sent. And then when he started showing a little bit of recovery, he got sent to a rehab center in Petersburg, which is 60 something miles away from the town I stay at right now. But that was the last time I've ever seen him in half the month because I had no transportation at all. Hell, my aunt's car was acting up at some point, which is why they haven't tried it, which is why I haven't tried to reach out to them at some point to see if they could take me up there. A week goes by, and then a doctor or a caseworker there calls me on my cell phone or house phone, I don't know. Yeah, it was a house phone. And they let me know that something happened up there that resulted to my dad having trouble speaking and all stuff like that at all. He couldn't get his words out. And because of that, that resulted to him being sent to or transported to the ER in Petersburg. The next day, after I let my aunt know, that's when we tried to go visit him, despite the fact that the vehicle was having issues. But we couldn't make it there due to, the vehicle having issues. We stopped somewhere to get some food and drinks because, it was 60 something miles away from the town I stay at right now. And we don't know how long we were going to be there. So we stopped at a store and got some food and drinks. And as we were about to pull off, the car's battery started messing up to the point where like it wouldn't even start. And when we did start it, it started malfunctioning. So we couldn't make it to the hospital, so we had to turn around. So after we couldn't make it, I tried numerous amount of times to try to reach out to the hospital there to see what the fuck happened. Yes, I'm going to cuss because this part pisses me off at some point. So yeah, I literally tried to see what happened. What happened that resulted to him getting sent to the ER. And when we finally reached out to someone, they couldn't even figure out what happened. But they were keeping me updated on everything that was going on, how he was doing and all stuff like that. And while he was being hospitalized there, he ended up catching COVID, which did not do that much damage, thank goodness. But having a stroke and having COVID, that's crazy. So after he started showing a little bit of recovery there, they transported him to another rehab center that happened to be close by. But I still couldn't see him due to lack of transportation, and my aunt's car was in and out of the shop. So I still had no transportation. And not to mention, he had his cell phone with him the whole time, which we tried to stay in contact with at some point. But after all the craziness that was going on, every time I tried to call him, it would go straight to voicemail. Like, it wouldn't ring at all, just straight to voicemail. So after he got sent to another rehab center, I haven't heard from him. I was assuming everything was going to be fine since he was getting sent to a rehab center to at least try to get his strength back. And then a couple days go by. I thought, why not just call and check up on him and see how he's doing on the house phone? So I looked up the rehab center. I forgot what the rehab center was called. I called the rehab center and see how he was doing. They ended up telling me that he got discharged back to the hospital in Petersburg. And I was sitting there panicking, asking what happened because I thought everything was fine. Why didn't they call me? I was asking them, why didn't they call me and all stuff like that? And they were telling me that they did try to call me, but failed to do so. And that was when I started getting upset at myself because just to let you know, my old cell phone was messing up to the point where like I couldn't even take and I couldn't make calls. So yeah, they did try to reach out to me. So yeah, they tried to reach out to me because he ended up falling at some point. He didn't hurt himself, thank goodness. But after he fell, he started to decline. He stopped eating, he stopped drinking, he didn't even want to talk to anybody. So they tried to reach out to me to get my permission to peg feed him since he wasn't eating and all stuff like that. But they didn't reach but they couldn't reach me. So without any other options, they sent him back to the rehab. They sent him back to the hospital in Petersburg. And while he was being hospitalized there again, they discovered that he was having fevers and all stuff like that from a sudden infection. So they ended up taking him to the ICU. And not only was he dealing with an infection, he was also dealing with a bowel obstruction due to lack of food and lack of eating and all stuff like that. So, of course, after finding out everything, my cousin Daquan volunteered to drive me up to Petersburg to see him. And when we got up there, he was not looking good. I meant what I said when I told you that he lost so much weight. My uncle and aunt was already up there, and they told me that he was down to 80 pounds. And because of how much weight he lost, his body was so contracted to the point where like his left leg was up in the fetus position. And every time we tried to move his leg, it would hurt him. So we were up there in the hospital for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, a surgeon, I think it was a surgeon, yeah, a surgeon walked in to talk to me, asked my family how everybody was doing and all that stuff. And they talked to us about everything. So yeah, they told me that they CAT scanned his stomach because, his bowels was obstructed, and they told me that there was a possibility that his bowels had a blockage in it. And this is where I was stuck in a lose lose situation, which was if the CAT scan goes through and it turns out that he actually does have a blockage in his bowels, they would have to do surgery. But because of how malnourished, whatever the word is, because of how malnourished and underweight he was, and because of how weak his body was, there was a 90% chance that he wasn't going to make it through surgery. And I was stuck in a position to where they could not do surgery without my permission. So if there was a blockage in his system, well, if there was a blockage in his bowels and I say yes to it, they do surgery and the surgery might kill him. And if I say no to the surgery, he was going to die regardless, and they was going to get him as comfortable as possible. So yeah, that situation sucked. So yeah, the next day goes by and the surgeon calls me to let me know that there was no blockage, thank goodness. But that doesn't change the fact that he was going to die. Because of the infection and because of how weak he was and all stuff like that, no matter what they did to try to make him feel better, he wasn't improving. So there was nothing they can do. Only thing that they were doing was keeping him alive. And after finding that out, I thought it was a good idea to bring him home for hospice because knowing my dad, that was what he would want. He would want to be at home with his son or with some family. So yeah, 2 days go by and they successfully brought him home for hospice and all stuff like that. And while he was at home, he wasn't even talking that much at all. And even if he was trying to say something, it was hard for him. It was hard to understand him because of how slurred his voice was and all stuff like that. And during the first 2 days of him being at the house, I got to admit, he got on my nerves because of how much he would used to call me. There were some moments where he would call me in the room and not know what he would want. But knowing him, and I told my cousin this, and he told me that maybe he was calling me in there for my presence. He was calling me in there to see me, see how I was doing and all stuff like that. Maybe he didn't want anything. He just wanted to see me. And yes, he would also call me as I was in a process of getting ready for bed, and it'll be 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But the last 2 days of him being here, he would start to decline. Like it got to the point where like he was fully aware of everything that's been going on around him, but at the exact same time he wouldn't respond. He wouldn't talk to me and all stuff like that. He wouldn't answer my questions. He wouldn't even shake his head yes or no and all stuff like that. And even if he could, it was just a simple like just barely shaking his head and all stuff like that. Hell, the last 2 days of him calling me, I was even asking him how come he wasn't even calling me. But yeah, like the last couple days of him being here, he was starting to get weaker and weaker and weaker. Couldn't even didn't even have the energy to talk and didn't even have the energy to shake his head and all stuff like that. And the day before he passed, my aunt reaches out to me letting me know that a family friend would like to come over and watch over him as I would get some rest and all stuff like that because because of him calling me a lot, I wasn't even getting that much rest, but it was worth it, right? So yeah, like you already know, I agreed to have somebody watch him as I would try to get some rest because everybody else in the family was busy working or outside of the city where I live at right now. So yeah, the next day comes, the family friend comes to visit him and sit with him and all stuff like that. And before I actually tried to get some rest, I was watching YouTube on my PlayStation, of course, and playing a little bit of video games, like single player video games. I couldn't even play online games because of how much he would used to call me. But hey, that whole experience kind of got me into single player games now. So yeah, she was watching him for 2 hours. And as I was about to finally get some rest, I laid down in the bed and everything. All of a sudden, I hear her yell out my name. And it sounded serious too. So I quickly rushed out of bed and went to see what was going on. He was laying there coughing and spitting up mucus and vomit and all stuff like that. So I ended up calling the hospice people. I wanted to call 911, but they did say that if something goes wrong to reach out to them. So I called them and they let me know that somebody was on their way over. So as somebody was coming over, my dad was struggling to breathe and choking on a whole lot of mucus and vomit and all stuff like that, but he didn't have the energy to cough it up. We had him try to cough into the pail or a bucket. He wouldn't even cough it up. So when somebody from hospice finally gets here, she checks his vital signs. She could barely get anything. She barely could even get his oxygen. So then he starts listening to his breathing and noticed how labored he was breathing. That's when she called out the fact that he was actively dying. She says, just talk to him. It's okay. Just tell him that it's okay. He can go. So I start hugging on him and letting him know that, hey, it's okay. You can go. I'll be all right. You can go. The family friend starts getting emotional, starts breaking down crying. She calls my aunt, who lives up the street from where I'm at, let her know everything that was going on, and she came over here instantly. I was continuing to hug him, hold him in my arms, just talk to him, letting him know that it's okay to go. You're not going to suffer. You're not going to be in pain anymore. And I will never forget the tears that was going down his face, probably because of the fact that he was choking. But I was believing he was crying because he was seeing mom and he was seeing granny and he was seeing the rest of his family that he lost. And as my aunt was praying over him, I even had my godmother on the phone, and they were praying for him, just talking to him and all stuff like that. He ended up passing away in my arms. And I'm trying my best not to cry right now because I'm currently numb on emotions right now because I feel like I've done enough crying. This situation has taken a toll on me like it's nothing. Because I'm going to say right now, my relationship with my father after my mom and grandmother died was strained. Like, he became hateful, he became grouchy, just always angry at the world. And like I said, ever since mom passed away, it killed him. And me and him were close before mom passed away. And ever since she passed away, he has been distant, he has been hateful, he has been angry, angry at the world and all stuff like that. I would try to hang out with them at some point, but he would always push me away. And every time we try to talk to each other now, it always lead to an argument at some point. And there were moments where like he would say some hurtful shit to me. Despite all the hurtful things that he said, I would always tell him I would never forgive him for the hurtful things that he would say. I thought I could resent my father because of all the hateful things that he would say to me. But I can't I can't resent him. And at the end I would always be over it because at the end of the day, he was all I had. Growing up, it was me, my mother, my grandmother, and my father in the same house. We never separated. And then I lost my mother in 2010, and then I lost my grandmother in 2014. He was all I had. And I was always stuck in this mindset where if anything happened to him, I don't know what I would do. He was all I had. So I learned to grow some tough skin and just ignore everything that he would say to me. Despite despite everything that he said, despite every hurtful thing that he said to me, despite our arguments, despite everything that we say to each other, we would always work through it. We would always work through it because all we had was each other. And it would kill us. It would kill us if one of us lost one another. And I'm gonna say right now, guys, his death affected me. His death fucked me up. I'm I'm I can't even describe to you guys how much I miss him. I can't even describe how broken I am right now. But I will be okay. I will get through this. And I'm gonna say this right now before I end off the video. If anybody is going through a similar situation like I am right now, you will get through it. I know you will. Just keep your head up high. Keep your head up. Stay positive. Stay strong. Because at the end of the day, everything will be okay. And at the end of each day, only God knows the way. Keep your head up. Stay strong. You got this.